Welcome back to CBS News Detroit at noon. When hiring an attorney, you often expose vulnerable parts of your life. But should you be worried about sharing those secrets? Let's go ahead and bring in our legal expert, Danielle Mayoras. Danielle, thanks for being on with us. What is attorney-client privilege? I feel like you hear about it in all the shows and movies, but we may not know the nitty-gritty details.
It actually is something that begins between the attorney and client as soon as you have that first communication with the attorney. So whether it's a meeting, whether it's a phone call, and what's important to know, it actually starts before you even hire the attorney. And this is for all areas of law, from estate planning, criminal law, and everything in between.
Why is that in place? Why is it so important?
We need people to trust us as attorneys because the goal is for the client to be able to share whatever they need to. And a lot of times, as you can imagine, it's personal information, it's tough to share sometimes really sensitive or complicated, and they need to have that trust between themselves and the attorney to feel comfortable. So knowing the attorney can't share that with anyone else, which is essentially what attorney-client privilege does, makes people feel a lot more comfortable. Kind of like going to the doctor, how you need to share everything with the doctor.
And it's great to know that that happens from the initial outreach, the email, the phone call, whatever it may be, as you're shopping around and figuring out who you want to work with.
Yes.
What if you bring a friend, a family member with you to meet with your attorney? What are the circumstances there?
Think about that, because what's interesting is when you bring someone else into a meeting with the attorney-client privilege isn't there anymore. Because now instead of just you and the attorney, there's a third party involved. And this is not just meetings with your attorney, but this is even emails with your attorney. So if you're emailing your attorney and including a friend or family member on the email, you may want to think twice about that.
So even the things, the two of you one-on-one, well, I guess it'd be two-on-one, those are not confidential because
Yes.
that third party is there.
Exactly. Everything else is confidential.
I bet people make that mistake unknowingly.
I think so. It often happens where you're including other people because you want the support of a friend or a family member, but you don't stop to think that if something changes and they need to testify or something happens, there's not that attorney-client privilege for that particular meeting or that email.
And what happens if, let's say, you do pass away? Is that still honored beyond your death?
It is. It's interesting because it's not only during your lifetime, but if I'm working with a client on estate planning, I can't then go tell all their business when they pass away, which is good because no client wants that. But the personal representative of the estate, the privilege transfers to them. So whoever you choose to act as your personal representative, they are allowed to communicate with the attorney and get any background information that they need. So you really want to think about who you're choosing for your personal representative.
Okay, I do have to ask this. This just popped into my mind. Are there exceptions? Because so often with, let's say, an HR department, something you may feel is normally in confidence, there are exceptions for violence or, thoughts of self-harm. Is there anything where that privilege goes away for a
Absolutely.
second?
In law, there's always exceptions. One thing is if you've committed a past crime and you're telling your attorney, it's actually okay. But if there's a future crime, there is not privilege for that. Thank goodness, because we don't want people to tell their attorneys they're going to commit a crime. That is not privilege. The attorney would need to obviously share that with the police. And then there's other times, like if I'm working with a husband and wife and doing estate planning, and then down the road they go through a divorce, anything said between the two of them, there's no privilege at that point in time. And there's also court exceptions, but overall, the privilege is pretty sturdy. So while there are exceptions, you should definitely feel confident and comfortable having that trust with your attorney and knowing that they do need to know all the details so that they can properly help you.
All right, Danielle Mayoras, fascinating topic. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Appreciate it.